Listen, firstly, this is definitely going down to the wire. We will be biting our nails in the final 10 minutes of the season when it comes to this race for a place in the top four, because it's so tight on points, but it's also so tight on goal difference as well, which is the decider in the Premier League. Hello, welcome to ESPN's Football Forecast. I'm Hugh Woozencroft alongside my good friend James Allcott, looking ahead to what could be a monumental weekend across European football. We've already had a busy last week. PSG, Juventus and Leicester City all winning domestic cups, but they will want to be in the biggest competitions, the Champions League, of course, when it comes to next season, and they've got massive fixtures ahead as well. We're going to focus in, though, on the Liga and the Premier League, to be very specific on the football forecast this week, because I think, James, this is as tight as it could possibly be, really, when you think about the history between the two clubs, Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid, sitting at the top of La Liga right now. Atleti with a 2-point advantage, knowing in the pit of their stomach, a team that's beat them in two Champions League finals, who has always had the bragging rights in the city, could pit them on the final day of the season. I think it's going to be a stunning end. I don't know how it's going to go. I wonder what you think.
Well, yeah, I mean, we obviously we give our predictions, we do our best, but I mean, this season has just been, it's been so chaotic. There's been so many games to have played, and I think you've got to sort of take a moment to say to these players how tough it must have been for them, with not having fans in the stadium has been huge. And I heard a fantastic story about how Atletico Madrid played that game last week, scored that pretty much last minute winner from Suarez. Yeah. And apparently it was the goal and the chaos in the stadium, then the music, then a whole gaggle of Madrid fans outside the stadium going crazy, because it's been such a tough part of it for me when it comes to all of these different leagues. And I think that's played a part when it comes to kind of a bit of sort of losing the pressure, losing their kind of stability in terms of how they've played. And that's why with Madrid, they've had that real wobble. But what I've seen, certainly from that game, and I thought there were some really interesting comments from the manager, Simeone, where he spoke about, this is the Suarez zone. He spoke about that. The Suarez zone, what he means is that certain players, and especially Luis Suarez, of course, when it comes to this part of the season, they are ready to step up. They've been there. They've done it before. And for Barcelona, of course, they've fallen by the wayside, which is something that you've always said, Hugh. But you've also always said that Real Madrid will get themselves over the line. But with that goal, I look at Madrid. I look at that starting lineup from that game. The average age was 28. These guys are in their prime. They've kind of been there and done it. And they're at the moment where they want to go and win La Liga titles. And that victory alone, I think, could well get them over the line. But you've said Real Madrid from the start. So do you think there might be a twist in this one?
I think that Luis Suarez goal was the moment the title was won. And I think that's why the reaction to it was so huge. Of course, coming from behind, the fact that they aren't big scorers. They've won the last couple of games by a single goal. I think everyone watching La Liga knows that their games at the moment are going to be tight. It's a strange one. I think people will sit there and say Atletico Madrid, maybe not the best team to have ever won La Liga if they do make it over the line. You know, not the most fluid football. Certainly, they've been turgid at times, but there's a reality to this, which is Diego Simeone has brought in the likes of Luis Suarez for that experience, for that laser focus this time of the season. He left Barcelona and you knew he was absolutely devastated. He came to Atletico Madrid with a point to prove. For him, it won't be proven unless they win that league title now. You know, it doesn't matter how many goals you scored or whatever impact you make on the team. It will be about that medal, showing Barcelona, what on earth were you thinking by letting me go? That's the biggest mistake you could have possibly made. You know, there are other players at the club on big salaries you could have had out the door. But me, really, after everything he's done, it's just a massive weekend for him. I think he'll be hugely influential in the game as well. I don't see it going any other way than an Atletico Madrid win, which is why I say that previous goal that he scored to win the last game was the title decider. Because, I think everyone knows they're not going to go and destroy teams at the moment. Their games are going to be tight. They're just going to get over the line. They're limping towards a title. They won't care. They've only won it twice since 1977. Think about that. A club as big as Atletico Madrid have only won a couple of titles in the last 45 years-ish, something like that. I don't know. I'm not good at maths. But the point is, it's been a long time, right? It's been a long, long time for them.
The one thing I would say, Hugh, with these games, I think actually both these games are difficult, right? Because Valladolid, who need to win the game as much as Atletico do, going into the last game, and Villarreal, who both of these games, of course, being played on a Saturday because Villarreal president they wanted the extra day for the Europa League. There was also concerns that this would clash with Eurovision, which unfortunately it's not going to now, apparently. But I wonder. For 90 minutes, Real Madrid were in first spot. I think that this whole weekend, there's been so many twists and turns that with these games, I wonder if this literally will go down to the final minutes. Because as you say, Madrid don't win too many games. Of course, they won 5-0 recently. But apart from that, they're never really scoring more than 2-3 goals at a push. So I think it will go down to those final minutes. And I just think along all the games that we're going to talk about, of course, we're going to predict with our heads here, but going into those final games and looking at form, I think there's bound to be a few twists and turns here. And I just wonder if it might be Real Madrid who, talk about Atletico stumbling across the line. Madrid, even that goal last week, what a great example. Nacho comes off his shins. Prior to that, it's been a lot of set pieces, a lot of turgid, difficult football that's coming from, set pieces or a bit of magic from Benzema. I wonder if in that game, not the luck, but I guess the experience that they've been able to kind of sort of squeeze out every little bit of output from. I wonder if that might kind of run out a little bit, and it could be Villarreal who cause an upset. I think there's one of these two teams aren't going to win. I've got a feeling it might be Real Madrid who almost hand the title to Atletico.
Listen, that's a really good shout. I just think Villarreal, they will have one eye on the Europa League final, of course. It's excellent preparation to play a team like Real Madrid, especially with something so massive to play for. I mean, look, they will know it's going to be difficult to get a result. Of course, they will know that, but they'll be confident in their own abilities. Villarreal, I think it's a far tougher game. I think we all know it's a far tougher game than Atletico Madrid have. Interestingly, I just think Diego Simeone, he sends his teams in, like it's war. He's been so used to it in cup competitions. He's got them to Champions League finals, Copa del Rey. He's won Europa League, of course. Getting them to a final game situation where they need to win is where he has thrived as a manager. It's where he's shown his real quality as a manager, to get his players to give absolutely everything. And he will say to them, you're 90 minutes from glory. You're absolutely 90 minutes from glory. Go out there in the first half. I think actually, for once, Atletico Madrid could win very, very big this weekend. Huge first half for them. Coming at halftime, a couple of goals up, and it could be easy streak from there. Real Madrid, this match for them is just it's massive in terms of the future of the club. We heard about Zinedine Zidane earlier this week. He denies reports that he's told the players he's going to be leaving in the summer. Sometimes there's no.
He sort of denied it, didn't he? Yeah, exactly. He sort of left more questions hanging in the air than clearing anything up. Don't you think?
Exactly. He could be on his way out. Let's be frank. He could be on his way out of the club. So for his players, it could be a last game with a club legend.
Let me ask you this question, Hugh. If they win the title, does that change anything for Zinedine Zidane in terms of his decision to either stay or leave?
I'm not sure, because it's still going to be a rebuild. There are fantastic players in the squad. They are getting older. Loads of them have had contract renewals, so they're not really going anywhere at the moment. We know that the marketplace in terms of transfers, in terms of what's happened with the pandemic, means they're not going to be easy to offload. Is Zinedine Zidane the man for a rebuild? And not only that, a very emotional, difficult rebuild for a manager who has won several Champions League titles with most of this squad. I just think it's going to be a huge decision for him to stay. It's going to be hard for him, of course, what he did at the club as a player and a manager. But again, politics in football is huge. They're not the only club in Europe who's going to have a really difficult summer, and a manager who's going to sit down with the board and have a tough conversation. Winning the league certainly makes that conversation a lot easier, and it makes it easier for him to ask the club to do what he wants. So it will be massive for him individually to see what he does. But if he's made his mind up on leaving Real Madrid, that would have been a difficult decision, a big decision for him to make. And if he's already decided it, I'm not sure a title is going to change his mind.
I couldn't agree more. I think this is the last game that Zinedine Zidane will manage Real Madrid because I think he wants to go on his own terms, and I think he sees what's coming here. You know, this team is trending in the wrong direction. You know, age is catching up with a lot of the squad, and like you said there, both the rebuild and almost, you know, those big names, it's been well known in the press that he's not been happy about the Ramos situation. They want him to stay, but will they be able to? Then the likes of, you know, any of those big money signings, if you're going to want to bring them in, it's going to hurt. You're going to have to let someone go the other way. If you want to go and get Mbappe, you're going to probably have to let Varane and maybe Ramos go to find the money to do it. It's going to get a lot.
Big debt, of course.
Yes, exactly. And that's it. It's good. The financial problems are clearly there. I think the long road ahead, what's interesting in some of the bits and pieces I've read, some of the podcasts I've listened to from Real Madrid fans, is that they think that it really is going to get kind of worse before it gets better. And that kind of cycle that I think we've seen with a lot of clubs, where you have this incredible manager, 11 trophies for Real Madrid, and then the next guy, it doesn't matter who it is to a point, he's going to be the fall guy. So a lot of talk about Raul coming up from Castilla, a lot of talk of Allegri as well. It's going to be so interesting to see what happens, because I do think Zidane goes, and whoever takes that job, it could well be a bit of a poisoned chalice, but hopefully he'll want to go out on a high and win a La Liga title. But I think we're both going with Atletico for this one.
I do. I think they'll win very healthily, and I think Luis Suarez will be on the score sheet. Yeah, he's going to rub that in Barcelona's faces, definitely.
Yeah, maybe Llorente with a goal as well. 12 this season. He's been absolutely fantastic. I agree with you. I think it will be Atletico Madrid's title. I think they've almost created that adversity for themselves that suits them, which is really, really strange. And I think there was a water break in that game last week and against Osasuna. And Diego Simeone, it was very clear in what he said. He said, "Get the first and you'll get the second, and stay calm." And I thought, wow, that's exactly what happened, I think. And I think they're ready to go and win that La Liga title. Let's move on to the Premier League then, Hugh, because, I mean, we thought La Liga was crazy. Premier League, it's not the Championship. Man City have ran away with that one. And despite losing in the week, I know you were at that game, Hugh, but it's top four that we've been talking about for the last few weeks, and it goes to the final day. You've got Liverpool against Crystal Palace, Leicester City versus Spurs, and Villa versus Chelsea. Hugh, how do you see this one going? And what are your thoughts on those midweek results?
Listen, firstly, this is definitely going down to the wire. We will be biting our nails in the final 10 minutes of the season when it comes to this race for a place in the top four, because it's so tight on points, but it's also so tight on goal difference as well, which is the decider in the Premier League. Looking at the results in midweek, you've just got to be really disappointed if you're Leicester City. The club on cloud nine after that win in the FA Cup final. Of course, they've never won that competition before. It was their first final since 1969. But all that elation, all that emotion that must have been expended, all that energy at the weekend, it showed against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. They were completely outplayed. And of course, they've got this feeling that the season is going to come off the rails, just like it did last year, with them dropping out of the Champions League places. Listen to this. They could easily have been in the top four in the Premier League for 68 out of the last 71 game weeks. Wow. And not made it into the Champions League in either of those two seasons, falling out of the top four at the wrong time in both years. And I think that's a failure for Brendan Rodgers and his team. I think you've just got to be realistic about it. It's great to win the FA Cup. The club hasn't done it before. Fantastic. But the bread and butter, as we call it, right, is in the Premier League. That's where you play 38 games, and really, I think they'll be really, really sad. And Brendan Rodgers in particular will be really, really sad, because he wanted to come to England and show his qualities as a manager. Yes, he's done that with a cup final win, but I think he wanted to see what he could do once again in the in the Champions League against the best clubs in Europe. So it'll be really sad for the club to miss out. Although, of course, they have that great memory of Yuri Tielemans, and what a fantastic goal in winning the FA Cup at Wembley. And I think that form might affect them this weekend. I think the only thing that's really good for them is that Tottenham Hotspur are also on pretty shoddy form of late. And of course, Leicester will be playing at home at the King Power Stadium. But James, this one is incredibly tough to call. Can you really say who's going to be in the top four?
No, I think this is one of those where I think we do need to kind of, you almost sort of stand back and let it play out. I think the one thing that I think we both agree on is that sometimes the psychology of sport is so important. And sometimes when you just got to stop worrying about losing and just go and win those games, I think you see a bit of a change there. And I think you've seen that with Liverpool. I think they could have almost gone with those 4 games that they had going into the Man United game. It was a case of, it was a tournament. It was a cup tournament and they needed to win them game by game, because if they didn't, then, they weren't going to finish in the top 4. And I think that kind of almost that sort of reset, I guess, psychologically has helped. And of course, a goal from your goalkeeper will help as well in the last minute. That's pretty useful as well. You spoke about being at home, being in front of your fans.
Yeah.
How do you think that will play a part in this? I feel like we've seen that, maybe not to the same intensity because you haven't got completely full stadiums, but for Liverpool to play at Anfield in front of at least a few of their fans, and for Leicester City to be able to do that as well, does that give them somewhat of an advantage as opposed to Chelsea, who are playing an Aston Villa team that are 11th, and that's a great season for them, but they will probably go into that game with that little bit more motivation due to a few factors, but having fans back in their stadium as well?
The fans make a huge difference. And remember, there are only home fans in these games.
Yes.
So it really is all support for the home team, nothing for the away team. I think it's affected the referees as well. I was at Brighton and Hove Albion, where, of course, they came from 2 goals down to beat the champions Manchester City 3-2. 8,000 fans. It felt like the stadium was full. Not just a feeling that it's so great to have fans back, but they did create an atmosphere. There was that noise, that sound that these players expect. And like in all the games we've seen this week, the players have been more aggressive. There's been shoving, there's been
more emotional.
There's been heavy tackles. There's been more emotion. So they definitely do make a difference. And I think actually they're a big positive for the side playing at home. Anfield, one of the best, amphitheatres of football across the world, we know already. I think their fans, 10,000 of them at the weekend, will make a huge difference against Crystal Palace. And that will take Liverpool over the line to hold on to that place in the top 4 for me. Leicester City's fans, of course, delighted after that cup win, will want to show their appreciation to their fans as well. And Tottenham Hotspur's fans booed them at the end of their game in midweek. So the feeling between the two sides is very, very different. I just don't think it's going to be enough for Leicester in the end, even if they do win the game. And then, of course, Chelsea, who play away from home, they're at Aston Villa. For me, that is where the top 4 race is going to be decided. Aston Villa, for me, do have a chance against Chelsea. They really do. I've been somewhat disappointed in Chelsea in recent weeks, especially the cup final, where I thought they went into it as favourites. I know we spoke about it, but the performance in a game of that magnitude, for me, despite Kasper Schmeichel's fantastic saves, wasn't at Chelsea's level, and especially the game against Arsenal before that. They're on the slide, maybe a little bit. They did bring their form back against Leicester, of course. But as I said, I think Leicester were maybe on a hangover after the FA Cup final. Yeah. So going into the game this weekend and the way Villa performed against Spurs, this is a really tough game for Chelsea. The big thing I said to you again about the cup final, and it happened in the end. Chelsea really don't like playing against the back 3 or a back 5, if you like, wing backs. They really don't like it. That's how Brendan Rodgers played in that cup final, and he won that game. It wasn't an entertaining one, which we also predicted, but he got the win in the end. And I wonder if Aston Villa will do the same, whether Dean Smith has seen that, and they will go out to frustrate Chelsea as much as possible, maybe nick a goal with Ollie Watkins, or who knows, Jack Grealish, who we know is a fantastic talent, who's in need of form after spending, 2.5, 3 months out. He's been on the bench a couple of games. He started against Tottenham Hotspur. He will definitely start on the weekend. He wants to show Gareth Southgate, the England manager, that he is fit and ready to be named in his England squad for Euro 2020 and play a big part in that tournament. So maybe he will take the mantle against Chelsea, and we might see a fantastic performance from him, which decides who ends up in the top 4 at the end of the season. But again, all of that being said, I find this incredibly tough to call.
Yeah, I look at it's Leicester the Chelsea game for me. I think the Liverpool one will be a very simple affair for Liverpool. Mo Salah to score a goal for me. I think he's been on fire and might well get himself that golden boot. But we've got to remember Harry Kane, because Harry Kane loves scoring goals against Leicester City. Leicester City fans will be fully aware of that. And as poor as Spurs have been, that is the one thing when I'm looking at these games, I'm starting to think, there has to be some surprises here. And
There will
I've
be.
got a funny feeling.
Games,
Sorry,
there will be a shock. In at least one of these games, there will be a shock. It's the Premier League. We know how tough the competition is. I just can't see it goes to, the favourites, the club that's higher in the league, just goes out and wins. It doesn't happen in any other weekend, and it's not going to happen on the final weekend either.
Yeah, certainly not this season. So Leicester City quite possibly might get that victory, but I've got a funny feeling there might be a draw there and they might slip up. I think you're right with Aston Villa. I think what's interesting there is, a few of those, the fact that Jack Grealish comes back in the team and then they play Spurs and they have 20 shots against Spurs away from home, a game where they looked fantastic on the counter attack. And I think against Chelsea, you're right. That back four, I mean, that's the only thing I would disagree with you slightly. Is I can't see them playing a back three, but I can see them being defensively quite sound. The back four for Villa has been back five, if you chuck Martinez in there as well, has been a huge success for them. And then if you add Jack Grealish in that team on transition, on the counter-attack, with Ollie Watkins scoring the goals that he has been this season, I think that's where your twist comes, right? I think that is where your twist comes. Finally, we've got to finish on maybe talking about the Spurs briefly, because obviously they take part in this final kind of games for the Champions League, but they're not involved in it at all. And they go into this game with the very severe possibility that Arsenal could finish above them and finish in, the Europa Conference Liga places for them. What can you say about Spurs, a Spurs team that is in drifting towards a bit of a meltdown this summer, don't you think?
Daniel Levy, their chairman, said it far better than me. He came out yesterday speaking to the fans. He said they'd lost sight of the club's DNA in recent times. And I think he's absolutely nailed it. I know so many people who were in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this week who booed at the final whistle. The players didn't immediately come out and do a lap of honour. Half the fans left 35 minutes after full time. They then emerged. It's just a complete disarray at Tottenham Hotspur right now. He's going to take responsibility for that. He's going to take responsibility for putting a 29-year-old in the shape of Ryan Mason in charge until the end of the season. They could easily end up finishing 9th in the table. Firstly, the fans will be even more unhappy if Arsenal finish above them, because we know the North London bragging rights, that's a real thing. That is a real thing,
yes.
Okay? So they're going to definitely be unhappy about that. But there's a reality here. You're about to lose your best player, probably the best player that's ever played for Tottenham Hotspur, certainly since maybe Jimmy Greaves, way back when, the 60s. This is a Tottenham Hotspur side that hasn't won trophies regularly. It's been a long, long time since they've won anything at all. They lost the cup final in the EFL Cup this year. They could lose Harry Kane. For me, I mean, what on earth is the club doing? That is a player who you put your future into, who you build around, who has a shape, who has a role in shaping the club going forward. Now he wants to leave, and that could be huge, not just for Tottenham Hotspur, but the Premier League for the next 5 years. I mean, imagine if he ends up at Manchester City, huge ramifications. A total joke to put Ryan Mason in charge. He's been, as you said, a competition winner. I think he's looked worse than that. I think most competition winners, if they supported Tottenham, would have been better.
I've promoted him. I've promoted him a little bit. I'm going to make him a substitute teacher. Yeah, I'll put him a substitute teacher now, because it does feel like he came in and they went, oh, we can kind of do what we want here for a bit. And there's been a few moments against the lesser sides where they've played with that bit of freedom. But with a substitute teacher, there's no ramifications, guys. and with that, you then kind of do what you want. And there just isn't that same kind of spirit in the team. And that performance against Aston Villa was absolutely atrocious. I think you're right. There's so many experienced figures out there that you could have brought in to kind of just have that experience at the right times to get yourselves into European football. And it's getting very scary for them, because you get to the summer and if Kane goes, Bale goes, Reguilon goes, you've got an aging team elsewhere. You look at West Ham above them at the moment. I mean, we think at the moment that's going to be a bit of an anomaly. I think that could be the future. What do you think?
Look, there are some very good teams in the Premier League. It's going to be a very competitive league next year. It's very tough to call. It all comes down to the summer, who makes big improvements, who's got some money to spend. But of course, every club in the Premier League, each and every summer, looks to improve. The only club that you can really see getting worse right now is Tottenham Hotspur, especially if they lose Harry Kane. And what will that mean for the other players in the squad? We know Gareth Bale's likely to go back to Real Madrid, but will Heung-min Son want to stay on a sinking ship, not a stinking ship?
Well, take your pick.
Yeah, exactly. Then I'm not sure about that. So yeah, Tottenham Hotspur really need to be careful with what they're doing, looking over their shoulder this summer. Looking ahead to this weekend, I think it's going to be a cracking end to the season. And I tell you, it's going to go down to the last 10 minutes. I think Leicester will win. I think Liverpool will win. Look out for Christian Benteke. I think he's going to have a lot of joy up against Reece Williams. I think he will score this weekend against his former club. But I think Aston Villa against Chelsea will end in a draw. They will end up going off to the Champions League final, having missed out on top four, all the pressure on Thomas Tuchel and his side. Up the Villa for this week. I think that's what they say in the Midlands.
Okay. Wow. So Chelsea to miss out, despite being third in the table as we look at it right now. I think they'll both slip up. I think that the whole season, every single team there, from probably Arsenal upwards, maybe, you could say had a shot at being in the Champions League places. And they've all just thrown it away at different times. And I feel like that would be the perfect sign off almost to a season of chaos. So I think Leicester will draw. I think Chelsea will draw. And I think Liverpool will get the victory and finish third in what's been a tumultuous season for them. And which will allow them, of course, to keep all of their players going into next season after what has just been. I mean, there's going to be a lot of PTSD, I think, for Liverpool fans after this season. Yeah. It's been a very, very tough time for them. So there you have it, guys. We normally get it wrong, but you never know. This season, there's been so many surprises. We might just get it right. The important thing now is for you guys to have your say. So let us know down below. Fingers crossed we can get one or two right this time. Hugh, thanks for joining me, mate. Always great to chat footy with you. Guys, join us again for ESPN's Football Forecast.